This shot isn't being captured on a fancy DSLR camera. It's not shot in a £4,000 mirrorless rig that is somehow hooked into my PC. This is being shot entirely on the Elgato Facecam 4K. And just straight off the bat, you're probably watching this video because you're thinking of getting it, you're thinking of getting a bit of an upgrade. I think it's 100% worth it, but there are some things you need to be aware of, and I'll try to get through this video as quickly as possible while also showcasing some of the features that make this webcam so cool. First things first, let's make this whole situation look a little bit more watchable rather than a middle of a nightclub. So originally I had a DSLR setup going into my PC through Camlink, and that was great, but what I found is that I was mostly using that camera for tiny little cropped shots in the middle of a video game, something like this, where you can just see a little bit of my face, or I was in the corner with a cropped out transparent background. It didn't really seem worth it to me to have a £2,000–3,000 camera setup just for that. So the Facecam Neo worked great in the corner, but I never really wanted to sit down and record videos like this where I'm big, full screen in your face, because in all honesty, I really pride myself on trying to deliver the best quality possible. The Facecam Neo is a great budget webcam, but sometimes when you have situations like this, it felt a little bit budget. The Facecam 4K shoots up to 4K 60, which I think is insane. And then above this, Elgato does have the Facecam Pro, which it's overkill for a webcam, but honestly, I don't see any reason why you would choose to go for that when this exists. The difference is marginal. It's tailored a little bit more towards professionals, but this will do everything that I need to do as a creator and more. I don't see a reason why you would upgrade to that, but there will be links to every single webcam and everything we talk about in this video down below in the description. So this is technically the mid-tier Elgato webcam, but it's 150 something pounds, give or take, cheaper than the most expensive one, and you're getting pretty much the same results. So if you're looking to get a kick-ass webcam, your options really, in my opinion, are between the Facecam 4K and the Facecam Neo, and that just depends entirely on your budget. As a point of reference, this is obviously being shot on the Facecam 4K, and this is being shot on the Facecam Neo. Now, for a, what is it, £60 webcam? Yeah, $59.99. I think it's an incredible webcam, and it looks perfectly fine, but a lot of that is down to Elgato software, which leads on to the next thing I want to talk about, and that is what makes or breaks all of Elgato's cameras. So this is Camera Hub. This is Elgato's software that controls both the Facecam 4K and the Facecam Neo, and this is where you're going to go in and fine-tune everything. Now, one of my biggest gripes with the Facecam 4K is when I plugged it in, this is what it looked like, and for a lot of users, this can be incredibly intimidating. The idea of having to go in and fine-tune all these values. What is an ISO? What is a shutter speed? A lot of people are not going to be familiar with these terms, and it's going to be a pain in the backside going through and trying to tweak everything. So once you actually start playing around with these settings, it becomes the most incredibly powerful webcam that I have ever used personally. The settings that I have right here, by the way, are 50% contrast, 75% saturation, and 50% sharpness. Exposure, I have that set to manual because I found that auto exposure is a little bit strange. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it makes me seem a lot darker than I actually am, or the scene. If I turn it on, instantly it brings it down. And I think primarily that's because I'm wearing a white shirt and it's trying to bring all those highlights down, but it's also darkening my face in the process. So that's why I have mine set manually. Shutter speed 1/60 and ISO 800. This will depend entirely on your setup. I have one big light in front of me here. I have a Keylight behind me. I have RGB lights everywhere in my room, so there's a lot of light going to my camera. If you don't have that, you're going to want to bump the ISO all the way up to 2,000, 5,000, 6,000, and that is the great thing about this camera. It has such an incredible sensor that it can take in so much light and work really well in low light situations. You may not even need big fancy lights like Elgato's Keylights, but they make you look pretty damn good. Now, one other thing that is worth addressing is the dynamic range, because we're in a situation right now, this is a very dark room. Also, if I have those curtains open in the middle of the day, that's a conservatory, so there is just light blasting through into this room. So we have the option with the dynamic range to go in, change it from standard to wide, and what that's going to do is bring all those dark areas all the way up and bring the lighter areas down, which means that if you're in a situation where you often have like really overexposed lights either behind you, to the side of you, somewhere in the scene, it's one less thing that you're going to have to worry about. Now, in this scene, this situation, it doesn't work entirely well, so let's go ahead and turn those lights off, and I'll also turn off the key light in the back and this light here. And you can see right now there are no lights in this room besides a little cabinet light, and those blacks, that dark area behind me, is not as prominent as if we were to turn this down to standard. And you can see this is what the average webcam is going to look like. And while this isn't exactly bad, sometimes you don't want to be sitting in a void of darkness. You can even go all the way to high and it will look something a little bit like this. Now this typically works better with brighter scenarios rather than darker, but you get the idea. It helps even everything out. Now one other thing that is worth addressing is the white balance. So when you have this set to auto, sometimes, like now, it does a pretty good job. Other times, not so much. And it's pretty good. Like 90% of the time, it gets a good looking image. But for me personally, I know the temperature of all the lights in this room, so I know that my natural value should be between 4700 Kelvin to 5000, something like this, which isn't a huge difference, but of course you can go ahead and turn this all the way up and give yourself a much warmer tone. But if you don't know too much about how cameras work, just stick it on auto. It should be fine 90% of the time, but for me personally, 4700. Then we have noise reduction, which I think makes a really big difference. So if we go ahead and turn this off, as you can see, the image got a lot less grainy. Now, I'm between minds about this one because this grainier sort of image, if we go ahead and zoom in, this camera has incredible crop, by the way. You can see that the grain on this image right here, it's pretty noticeable. I kind of like that aesthetic, to be honest, because it seems more natural. If we go ahead and turn the noise reduction on, and let's put it to medium, just for example, you can see that it smooths it all out, but it also smooths the motions. If I stay really still just for a second, you will see that all the sort of fibers on my beard, all the hairs and the strands, they become quite vivid. But as soon as I move, they kind of blend together, and that's what noise reduction does. It's meant to do that. But if we turn it off, the motion isn't really affected that much. You can see all the details as they should look. So I think this one is entirely down to preference. You can just add noise reduction stuff in editing if that's really a concern of yours, but if you're live streaming, I don't think anybody's going to pixel peep and see the nitty-gritty details of your webcam. Not something you really have to worry about. So those are the settings that I have found work best for me. Play around with them for yourself. I just felt like I had to have a segment in this video addressing the settings, because when I first plugged this thing in, it was a great quality camera, and after tweaking it, I got a really good quality image, but it's just working up to that point and fine-tuning everything. That's not something that everybody's going to be comfortable doing, so if you get the Facecam 4K, hopefully this helps you. Now, while we're on the topic of setting up the camera, making it look as good and as fancy as possible, it's worth saying that this background blur, you know how everything's all separated right now? That isn't just the webcam. We had the same thing with the Facecam Neo. All of the background blur is done through processing your image through Elgato software, which is Camera Hub. So we can actually go ahead and turn it off like this, and this is what the webcam looks like natively. Now, I don't think there's any issue with this image at all. I just like having that separation from the background, but it's worth saying you do not get that naturally. You can turn it on, and right now the background blur is on 0%. It's technically shouldn't even be on, but we can turn this 0% all the way up to 100, and I'm completely separated from the background. Or we can turn it to around about 50. It looks a bit more natural, still a little bit overkill. Slowly bring it down. This is 10%, and I think this is like the most you would ever want to go without it looking really artificial, but you get the idea. If you want this background blur, it does come at the expense of a little bit more processing done inside of a Camera Hub. Is it a huge amount? No, absolutely not, but it is something to bear in mind. So once you've dialed in all your settings right here inside a Camera Hub, you would then go over to Effects, and then you have the little blur option right here, and like I said, you can turn this all the way up, you can turn it all the way down. I keep mine at 0%. You can also throw on some of these AI backgrounds that Elgato have done, which completely get rid of the background. You still have obviously the lighting going on right here, but for the most part, you're not really going to notice any of that. And there's a couple of different options here. You have some static images, things like this, which again, just help hide whatever's behind you. If you can't be bothered to tidy your room or something like that, this is a really good way of doing things. You can be a news reporter if that's something you want to do with these animated backgrounds. Now, one thing that I would love Elgato to add is the option to send a transparent image, so no background whatsoever. My workaround for this at the moment, you can use OBS filters and stuff like that, which I'll showcase in another upcoming video. Or what I have done is I've added this little guy right here, which is just a very simple green color that sits behind me, and this acts as a chroma key that you can just instantly remove inside of OBS by using a chroma key filter. So pretty much all the processing is done by Camera Hub, and then you just send this image to OBS and you get a near perfect image. The only issue with that is you get these little ghosting artifacts like between my fingers, around my chair and things like that. Is it a big deal? No, Absolutely not, but it's just something to be aware of if you choose to do this whole chroma key method. Then you have the option to add LUTs, so if I go ahead and turn that off, this is what the image looks like straight out of the camera. Some people may prefer this because it's more natural. Other people, you may want something a little bit like this. Let me turn the intensity all the way up. Like, this is way too dramatic, but you get the idea. You have these like really cool tones and effects that you can cycle through, and there's more you can get from Elgato's marketplace. But I like to keep the intensity for these at around about 50% because then it's not like too overpowering. Then one thing that I've never used in my life is this little eye contact AR effect. I think Elgato is going to be adding more of these in the future, but if I turn this on, like, I'm going to keep my eyes faced right down here, okay, towards my Stream Deck. My eyes are still locked on the Stream Deck. They're now moving around. I am not looking at the camera at all. Elgato has made this little option to constantly look at the camera, which is great if you're giving presentations and things like that. I think it's a little bit creepy, but if I just toggle this on and off, you can see that it actually decides where my eyes go at all times. Again, this is great for presentations, but pretty much any other use is absolutely terrifying. Okay, so at this point in the video, I would normally talk about tech specs and things like that. I'm not going to do that today, and that's very simply because you want to know whether or not the camera looks good and whether or not it works and will be good enough for your purposes. You already have an idea at this point in the video whether or not that is going to be good enough for you. If you want to know more about tech specs, boom. There you go. Here is everything you need to know about the Facecam 4K. It is not the most aesthetic way of delivering that information. The best way is just to go to Elgato's website, have a scroll through, and if you decide to grab the camera, use code HERO at checkout to save yourself a little bit of money. One thing that I am going to talk about though is this little guy right here. You can add filters, 49mm filters to be exact, to the Facecam 4K. Now, what are filters? It's not the Instagram filters. This is something completely different, and this is more going into the realm of like proper videography and photography. Filters are things that you can put on top of lenses that can change the style and the aesthetic that you get with an image like this. So for this little demonstration, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn off the background blur to proper utilize and showcase how these work, because Elgato sent me all of these. Oh wait, there's more. Hang on. They sent me every filter known to man. Now, I don't think Elgato is actually going to be selling their own filters and things like that. I'll put links to everything here in the description. So the first one we have is a HMC star filter. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not overly familiar with these. I used to be into photography, never cared for anything beyond polarizers and stuff like that. Just basic things that every photographer would need. I like this packaging, dude. Look at this. This is fancy, a little wallet and stuff. This is it. This is the filter, and this just screws on. Oh, hey, you seeing that? That's the filter right there, the star filter. I need a flashlight. Okay, look at that. But I mean, just the idea that you can change, I'm turning the filter right now, change the orientation and get these cool effects with the filter. That's pretty neat. There's a couple of other star filters in here which I assume would determine the strength of the effect. Now, again, I'm not going to go through everything. Thank you to Elgato for sending these out to me. I don't think people are going to be interested in the difference in strengths. If you want a video on that though, let me know and I'll be more than happy to make it. Then we have a CPL filter, which I am very fond of these. Oh, that's pretty neat. A really solid design as well, damn. So this one comes with a little lens cap. Okay, so you may notice that the camera is a little bit darker. I'm actually going to just compensate for that by turning the Keylight up a little bit. And the coolest thing is with a CPL filter, if anybody who doesn't know exactly what it is, imagine you give your webcam or your camera a pair of sunglasses that also kind of change the glare of certain objects. So keep an eye on all the lights and the reflections in the room, particularly the one on the TV. As I slowly turn the ring, watch how all that light is suddenly diffused and those reflections just kind of disappear. So in short, that is what a CPL filter does. It gets rid of all the reflections, polarizes the lights a little bit so that you don't really have to worry about light bouncing off objects where you wouldn't normally want them to. Next up, we have a nostril tone orange. Now, I assume this will just give everything a bit of an orange hue. I just fixed my exposure, but you get the idea. If we pop this on, I'm not going to even screw it on. It gives an orange hue to everything, and that's off. That's on. I feel like I'm an optometrist. You know when they test your eyes and they're like, hey, can you, what What is this letter? What is the difference in this thing? And then we have a black diffusion filter, which is one of my most anticipated from the bunch. And for this, we actually have two filters in one. So we can pop one on, or we can combine the two together like so. And then you have a double power when we put this on like so. Now, if I turn all the background lights on, you can see that lights like this and the orange one, the one in the cabinet over there, they have this really cool glow. Now, this is nothing being added inside of a camera hub. It is just the black diffusion filters that are being put on the webcam, and they add this like really cool lightsabery effect. Like, look how cool this looks. Like, this feels like we're in Star Wars right now because of how cool this effect is. So just as a point of reference, filter on, filter off. Something that I just noticed while using this though is even though it's really shallow, you wouldn't really think of this as being an issue because of how wide the Facecam 4K is. You'll notice that around the edges of this shot right now, particularly like down there, you can see a little bit of vignetting, little dark areas, and that is because the filter is protruding into the actual frame that the camera is shooting. And if you're curious, I'm using a 1/8 and a 1/4, putting them together, and that's created the effect that you've just seen there. And then finally, we have a macro kit, which I'm curious about. I've never thought about using a webcam for macro possibilities. I suppose if you're a streamer that does like painting and things like that, little minifigures, could be kind of a cool idea. And we have 4 filters in here. I'm going to go and just showcase what I assume is the least effective filter and also the most effective, and we'll see what kind of macro shots we can get for those. Okay, so let's start off with a number 2. Not too crazy of a difference here. What you'll find is as we go up in strength with the macro filters, I become more and more blurred and out of focus. And that's because if I put this here, like not a crazy difference. I think it just kind of focuses a little bit more on me, if anything. But the idea is I want to be able to put this guy up here and you can see all the fine details in the little minifigure. So that was a +2, and now we're going to go straight to a +10 and see. Whoa, let's see what the difference is. Damn, look at that. Okay, I'm feeling it. Pretty damn cool. And we actually have like a nice natural depth of field going on as well. Now, you know, I have to put all of them together, all 4 of them, just to see what that looks like. Okay, so we have a +2, a +4, a +8, and a +10. Okay, I'm going to crop in with the camera so we can get rid of that vignetting. And then where's my minifigure gone? Like, we should not be able to do this with webcams. I feel like this is wrong. Look at the detail in this dude. Okay, well, that's making me eerily conscious of my fingernails. So you get the idea if you're into like painting and minifigures and stuff like that. Loads of really cool potential, and that's actually really impressed me. The idea that you could just have the Facecam 4K off to the side, looking at something you're painting or you're working on, or even like a little macro B-roll shot for a video without needing to go and buy a £700-800 lens. That's a pretty sick idea. I kind of like that. Okay, so I think at this point in the video, you've already made your mind up on whether or not you think this camera is for you, and I'm not here to sway you one way or another. Like I said, there are links down below that help support everything we do in the channel, and you can use code HERO to save some money. But before you go and do that, there is one thing that I wanted to address, and it's the only... I don't even want to say issue, but I feel like this webcam is in a very strange middle ground, right? It's quite expensive for a webcam. I recognize that. I see where those comments are going to be coming from, especially if you compare it to the Facecam Neo. This is a cool webcam. Is the quality anywhere close to the Facecam 4K? No, but this is £60. The Facecam 4K is £120 more expensive, sitting at $179.99 Great British pounds, which converts to around about $199, I think it is for Americans. You get the idea. It is a pretty expensive webcam, and I understand that. I get where those complaints are going to be coming from. And honestly, I was a bit apprehensive at first. I was like, could I, outside of being an ambassador, see myself dropping £179 on a webcam? At first, my answer was no. My answer was, that's way too expensive. And then I started playing around with it and adding the background blur and playing with the settings and connectivity with OBS. And I was sticking it on my prompter, which, by the way, they're releasing an official backplate for it, so you can attach it to the prompter without needing to use a shroud or some kind of weird jerry-rig solution. That's coming soon. I'll link that down below when it's becoming available. But my point was, it is a very expensive webcam. But when you can get quality like this, the only other competition, the comparison, the next step up, in my opinion, would be something like a DSLR. And the cheapest entry-level DSLR kit lens, some second-hand Canon camera. Hang on, wait, I have an example. Okay, this is my cheap second-hand Canon camera with a kit lens. This costs around about £400 to buy second-hand. I don't even think they make this model anymore because it's so outdated. This is your next step up, and it's an additional 230 something pounds for a kit setup, and then you need to buy like a Elgato Cam Link or something to hook this up to the PC. You're looking at like nearly a £300 jump to be able to get quality on par with this. If you want the best quality video that you can get without breaking the bank and going into DSLR territory and setting up cam links and things like that, the Facecam 4K will deliver everything. I mean, look at this shot. The idea that you could get something like this with the background blur, I don't even think you can get background blur this good with a kit lens. You're going to want to upgrade to something like this, the Nifty 50 that goes on the Canon camera and also costs an extra 50 to 100 pounds. The price just keeps going up, and then you realize that the Nifty 50 is a great lens, but it's also really cropped in at 50mm. You get the f1.4 aperture, which is great, but you also then need 20 feet of separation between you and the camera to be able to get a shot as wide as this, and it's issue after issue when you start looking into this, and it's expense after expense. So my consensus is this. This is the best webcam I have ever had the opportunity to use. It is the most brilliant and powerful and visually stunning when you compare it with something like a Camera Hub. It has endless options of pairing it with the Stream Deck and OBS and all these other pieces of software that we use on a regular basis. Canon, Sony, none of them have that. So if you're looking for the best simple streaming setup with all of these integrations, the Facecam 4K is it. If you want the best image, go for a DSLR. If you dropped £4,000 on a Sony A7S Mark IV with an 18mm f1.2 lens, dude, of course that's going to look better. That's also going to make your accountant cry. Although I'm meant to be talking about the Facecam 4K, there is nothing wrong with the Facecam Neo if you're looking for a good looking webcam. This is just the Neo on steroids. So my objective with this video wasn't to sell you on the product, it was to showcase what it's capable of and tell you that I think it's a great webcam if this is the budget you're working with. If you have more cash and you want the best setup, go and spend a lot more on a DSLR or a mirrorless setup. But if you want the best webcam on planet Earth right now, it is this. And that's not me saying it from the standpoint of an ambassador. I've criticized this thing. I've said that my experience out of the box was rough. There's also things like when you shoot in 4K, you can't use the background blur or any of the background effects, which in my opinion is one of the main appeals of using this camera. Elgato have said that that is something they're going to be working on and hopefully adding in over time, but that's a lot of processing to do and they want to make it available to everybody. And it's just another reason why I'm proud to be part of Elgato's ecosystem and the things that they're doing, because the software and all the integrations and everything that come with it are insane, and I'm proud to be able to showcase things like this to you. Quick little note from me in the future. I figured I would just address something. I did mention that when you record in 4K with the Elgato Camera Hub software, it doesn't let you use any background effects. They are just blocked. You cannot do it, so you can't get that background blur. However, if you use OBS to record and import that 4K camera, like this situation right here, it will be kind of demanding on your PC, but there is a way to do it. Again, this is just for people who want specifically to shoot in 4K and you've got some crazy rig. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go to this right here, which is my full screen camera setting thing. We're going to go and add a filter and then we're going to go down to NVIDIA background blur, and just by adding this we can get that background blur effect. You're not only processing 4K footage with LUTs and everything else, but you can do this. You can add the background blur right in here through OBS. I just figured I would showcase it because it is possible. It is not available at all through Camera Hub, which sucks. I hope that they add it for 4K footage in the future, but this is a little workaround just in case you do want that functionality. But there we go. I've been sat yapping my face off about this webcam for the last hour and a half. That's how enthusiastic I am about it. But I now need to trim that into a 15-20 minute thing. If you have any questions about the webcam before you buy it or afterwards, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you out. And Elgato, thank you so much for sending this out to me. Letting me be a part of these little releases and getting early access to stuff. It really does mean the world to me. There are links to everything down below in the description. I love your faces. You're amazing, you're beautiful, and I'll catch you in the next one.